The mining colony on the edge of the rim was quiet that day. Most of the workers had gone back to their dorms after a long shift, and only a few people moved through the dusty, dimly lit corridors. The wind outside howled against the metal walls, carrying fine red dust from the barren world beyond. Inside Base 7, a storage area that had been damaged in last week's small quake, a human crew had been ordered to check for salvageable equipment. The captain of the small cargo ship Silver Dawn, a middle-aged man named Dean, led his team through the half-collapsed entrance. Lena, the ship's engineer, followed close behind, brushing dust from her brown hair. The air smelled of rust and machine oil. Dim lights flickered above. Broken crates, bent support beams, and smashed tools littered the floor. "Most of this is scrap," Dean said, kicking aside a cracked storage box. "We might still find something useful," Lena replied, her eyes scanning the shadows. That's when she heard it, soft, almost too quiet to notice. A whimper. She froze, holding up a hand for silence. "Wait! Did you hear that?" The others stopped. There was only the faint hum of the emergency lights. Then it came again, a tiny sound, weak and full of fear. Lena moved carefully toward a pile of broken crates in the far corner. As she stepped closer, her boots crunched on shattered metal and glass. She knelt down, pushing aside a splintered panel. There, huddled in the shadows, was a small creature unlike anything she had ever seen. It was about the size of a terrier, its fur shimmering faintly in shades of silver and blue. Its large ears twitched, and its golden eyes stared at her, wide with fear. The creature's body trembled, and its sides rose and fell rapidly. It had a long, bushy tail, but the fur was dirty and matted. "Oh, you poor thing," Lena whispered. Dean came, over frowning. "What is it?" "Not sure," Lena said softly, "but it's hurt." She noticed a shallow gash along its flank, and one of its front paws was swollen. The creature whimpered again when she reached out a hand, but didn't pull away. "Could be dangerous," one of the crew muttered. "Look at it," Lena replied, her voice firm. "It's just a baby," Dean sighed. "The station laws are strict about alien wildlife. You know that. If we leave it here, it'll die," she said without looking at him. There was a pause. The small creature blinked slowly, as if it understood what was being said. Finally, Dean rubbed his forehead. "All right, but if we get caught with it, we're in trouble." Lena smiled faintly and gently lifted the creature into her arms. It was lighter than she expected, but its body was warm, and she could feel the rapid beat of its heart. As they carried it back toward the Silver Dawn, the creature didn't struggle. It just rested its head against her chest, eyes half closed from exhaustion. Once aboard, Lena took it to the med bay. She set it on a soft blanket and began cleaning its wound. It watched her with quiet curiosity, tilting its head when she spoke. "We need a name for you," she murmured. Dean, leaning in the doorway, chuckled. "Already naming it?" "Spark," she said, smiling at the way the silver-blue fur caught the light. "Yeah, you look like a spark." Over the next few hours, Spark began to relax. Lena gave him water, and he drank eagerly. When she brought a small dish of nutrient paste, he sniffed it, then licked it clean. Later, as the crew gathered for dinner, Spark limped slowly into the mess hall. Everyone stared for a moment, then softened as he sat near Lena's feet, curling his tail around himself. "He's smart," one of the younger crew members said. "Look at those eyes." Indeed, Spark's eyes seemed too intelligent for an ordinary animal. When Lena reached down to stroke his head, she felt a strange warmth in her mind, a fleeting image of her own face, smiling, as if seen from Spark's point of view. She blinked. "Did anyone else?" Dean raised an eyebrow. "What?" "Nothing," she said quickly, though her heart was racing. That night, Spark slept in the engineering bay, curled up on a blanket near Lena's workbench. The low hum of the ship's systems seemed to comfort him. Lena sat at her desk, unable to shake the feeling she had felt earlier. That Spark had somehow shown her what he saw. In the morning, she found him waiting at the door, tail swishing, lazily. When she opened it, he trotted ahead, leading her toward the bridge. Dean was there, checking their departure route. Spark padded right up to him and sat, looking up expectantly. "He's got no fear now," Dean said. "You've made a friend." But as Lena smiled, a thought troubled her. Out here, strange creatures often had strange enemies. Spark had been alone in that collapsed bay for a reason, and she couldn't shake the feeling someone or something might be looking for him. For the next 2 days, life aboard the Silver Dawn settled into a quiet routine. Spark followed Lena everywhere, his limp improving as his injured paw healed under her careful treatment. He learned where the crew liked to sit, which doors slid, open with a hiss, and how to curl up in the warmest spots near the ship's engines. But it wasn't just his quick recovery that amazed them. Spark understood things, complex things. One morning, Lena dropped a spanner under a workbench in engineering. Before she could bend to pick it up, Spark had already padded over, hooked it with his paw, and nudged it toward her. "Thanks, Spark," she said, half laughing. He wagged his tail, eyes bright, and she felt another flicker of that strange warmth in her mind. This time the image was clear, Spark showing her the tool in his mouth, proud of himself. She froze, staring at him. "You're talking to me, aren't you?" Spark tilted his head and let out a soft whine, almost like a yes. Midday, the entire crew knew Spark could send feelings and images into their minds. Some of the crew were unsettled by it, but most were fascinated. It was like having a living translator for emotions. Still, Dean remained cautious. "We don't know what species he is. We don't know what trouble might come with him," he warned over dinner. Lena stroked Spark's fur as he rested beside her chair. "I know trouble when I see it, Captain. Spark isn't trouble, but trouble, as if summoned, wasn't far away." On the third night, the ship's long-range scanner picked up an approaching vessel. "Registration?" Dean asked, leaning over the console. The navigator squinted at the readings. "Unknown, but the signature matches Elvery patrol craft." The room went quiet. Everyone knew the Elvery. Tall, cold-blooded aliens who guarded their borders fiercely. They were also infamous for their genetic research programs, which often involved capturing rare species for study. Lena's stomach sank. She looked down at Spark, who was staring at the display screen, ears flattened. As the patrol ship closed in, a message crackled through the comms. A deep, commanding voice filled the bridge. "Human vessel Silver Dawn. You are carrying restricted, biological property. Surrender it immediately for collection." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. "Restricted biological property?" Dean said, voice dry. "That's one way to describe him." Lena felt a faint pulse in her mind. Spark was sending her rapid flashes, dark rooms, metal cages, sharp instruments. The images were so vivid she flinched. "Captain," she said quickly, "if we give him to them, they'll torture him." Dean rubbed his jaw. "If we don't, they'll open fire." Spark suddenly stepped forward, standing between Dean and the main console. His fur bristled, and his golden eyes glowed faintly under the bridge lights. The hum of the ship's systems seemed to grow louder. Then, without touching anything, Spark sent another mental wave, this time to the ship's AI. Lights flickered. A deep vibration ran through the hull. The AI's calm voice spoke. "Defensive countermeasures armed." Dean's eyes widened. "How did he—" The Elvery patrol fired the first warning shot, a beam of energy that grazed the Silver Dawn's shields. Spark's fur flared brighter, and the ship's automated turrets spun into position, firing back in precise, rapid bursts. "Shields holding," the navigator reported. "Their forward weapons array is offline!" Dean slammed his hand on the console. "Full burn! Get us out of here!" The Silver Dawn shot forward, engines roaring. Spark kept his gaze fixed ahead, as if guiding them through the darkness. For nearly an hour, the Elvari pursued, but Spark's strange connection to the ship allowed the crew to dodge attacks at the last second, weaving between asteroid fragments and debris fields. Finally, the patrol ship broke off, its hull sparking. From damage, the crew let out a collective breath of relief. When the danger had passed, Spark collapsed beside Lena, panting. She scooped him up and carried him to her quarters, wrapping him in a blanket. "You saved us," she whispered, stroking his fur. In response, Spark sent her an image, not of the battle, but of the crew safe and smiling together. The next morning, the crew gathered in the mess hall to discuss what had happened. "That was no accident," Dean said, glancing at Spark. "He's bonded to the ship's systems somehow." "Or the systems have bonded to him," Lena added. "He's not just smart, he's connected. It's like he can think with the ship." "Which makes him even more valuable to anyone who knows about him," the navigator said grimly. Dean nodded. "And now the Elvari know exactly where we are." Spark, sitting under the table, gave a soft growl that everyone could hear. "We can't stay in this sector," Lena said firmly. "We need to get to neutral space." The captain agreed, but fuel reserves were low. They'd need to pass through the Gray Belt, a lawless region of drifting stations and asteroid colonies, to reach safety. As they approached the Gray Belt later that day, Spark grew restless. He paced between crew members, sending flashes of unfamiliar places and faces into their minds. Lena guessed they were memories from before they found him, maybe even his home. But one image was clearer than the rest. A large, sleek Elvari research cruiser, its emblem etched into her memory. "That's the one who hurt you, isn't it?" she asked quietly. Spark didn't answer in words, but the sorrow in his eyes told her enough. Hours later, they docked at a small refueling outpost hidden inside a hollow asteroid. The place smelled of engine grease and stale air, and merchants shouted over one another in the narrow market halls. Lena kept Spark close, wrapping him in a cloth so his glowing fur wouldn't draw attention. While Dean negotiated for fuel, Lena browsed a stall selling mechanical parts. Spark's ears twitched, and suddenly he pressed against her leg, sending a sharp mental pulse. Danger. She turned just in time to see two figures in dark armor pushing through the crowd, scanning faces. Their armor bore the Elvari emblem. Her heart pounded. "Captain," she whispered into her comm, "we've got company. Get back to the ship. Now!" Lena pushed through the crowd, Spark hidden under the cloth. The armored figures turned toward her, moving faster. By the time she reached the docking bay, the Silver Dawn's engines were already warming up. She sprinted up the ramp as the first blaster shot echoed through the hangar. Spark wriggled free of the cloth, planting himself in the center of the ramp. His eyes glowed again, and the hangar's lights flickered. For a split second, every Elvari weapon in sight powered down. The crew didn't waste the moment. They launched from the outpost, at full thrust. As the asteroid shrank behind them, Dean glanced at Lena. "We can't keep running like this. Sooner or later they'll catch up." Spark hopped into the co-pilot's seat, sending an image into everyone's mind. A star map, with a single point of light pulsing far beyond the Gray Belt. "What is that?" the navigator asked. Lena's voice was soft, almost a whisper. "I think he's showing us where he wants to go." Dean met her gaze. "Then we'd better find out what's waiting there." The Silver Dawn drifted in the darkness, far from the safety of any trade route. The only sound inside was the steady hum of the engines. Everyone was gathered on the bridge, staring at the glowing star map Spark had sent into their minds. The pulsing point of light was far beyond any of their planned paths, past the Gray Belt, past even the known trade systems, into a quiet, uncharted region of space. Dean studied the map, arms folded. "If this is real, it's weeks away, even with full burn." "It's real," Lena said, glancing at Spark. The little creature sat at her side, watching the projection with calm focus. "Question is," the navigator added, "what's out there? Could be nothing. Could be a trap." Spark looked up at each of them in turn, his golden eyes full of certainty. Another image appeared in their minds, this one clearer than before. A world covered in green forests and blue oceans, a place full of life and light. His home? Lena guessed. Spark sent a soft pulse of warmth into her mind, like a quiet yes. Dean exhaled slowly. "All right. Set a course, but we move carefully. The Elvari are still hunting us." The journey was not easy. To avoid detection, they traveled through little-used drift lanes, coasting on low power when they could. The silver dawn slipped through asteroid clouds, hiding in their shadows, and skirted the edges of ion storms. Each day, Spark seemed to grow stronger. His limp was almost gone, and his fur had regained its soft, shimmering glow. Sometimes, he would curl up near the ship's main console and close his eyes as if listening to something deep in the metal walls. One night, Lena found him there, eyes half closed, sending faint pulses through the ship's systems. "What are you doing, Spark?" she asked softly. He opened his eyes and sent her an image, the ship moving faster, quieter, as if it had been tuned perfectly. She smiled. "You're helping us." He tilted his head as if amused, then rested his chin on his paws. 5 days into the journey, trouble came again. The ship's sensors detected a faint but familiar energy signature, a shadow following them at extreme range. "Elvari patrol," the navigator confirmed grimly. "They're keeping their distance, but they're not letting go." Dean frowned at the readout. "They must be tracking Spark somehow. Or us." Spark lifted his head, ears twitching. He padded over to the display, staring at the blip that represented the enemy ship. His fur bristled. He sent them all an image of the silver dawn darting into a dense, swirling cloud of red and gold gas. Some kind of nebula. "The Crimson Veil," the navigator said slowly. "Dangerous area. Unstable magnetic fields. Navigation. Systems go crazy in there, which means the Elvari will have the same problem," Dean said. "Plot a course." As they entered the Crimson Veil, the space outside their viewports turned into a storm of shifting colors. Tendrils of gas curled and twisted around the ship, and static danced across the hull. The Silver Dawn's sensors flickered with false readings, but Spark sat calmly at the console, eyes glowing faintly. Guided by his strange awareness, they slipped between collapsing gas pockets and sudden lightning arcs. The Elvari ship followed at first, but soon its readings went wild. Unable to match the Silver Dawn's precise movements, it veered off course and vanished into the swirling clouds. When they finally emerged on the other side, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. "Remind me to listen to the puppy more often," the navigator said, smiling faintly. Spark gave a satisfied little huff and trotted back to Lena's side. 3 days later, they reached the edge of known space. Beyond was only darkness and a scattering of faint stars. The pulsing point on Spark's map grew brighter in their minds, guiding them like a beacon. But before they could celebrate, the long-range scanner lit up again. Multiple contacts. "Not Elvari," the navigator said after a tense moment. "These are different. Smaller ships. Pirate signatures." A fleet of scavenger craft slipped out from behind a cluster of asteroids, surrounding them. The pirate leader's voice came over comms, dripping with mockery. "Unmarked human freighter. You've wandered into the wrong neighborhood. Hand over anything valuable and maybe we'll let you go." Dean muted the channel. "We can't fight them all. Ideas?" Spark stepped forward, tail high, and sent them a strange image, an asteroid splitting apart to reveal a hollow space inside. "Is that a hideout?" Lena asked. Spark sent another pulse of agreement. Following Spark's lead, they steered toward the indicated asteroid. The pirates gave chase, weapons charging. Just before the first shots hit, Spark's eyes glowed brighter than ever. The asteroid ahead cracked open with a deep, grinding noise, revealing a cavern lit by strange blue crystals. The silver dawn dove, inside, weaving between the sharp stone spires. The pirates tried to follow, but the narrow tunnels and jagged turns were too dangerous. One by one, their ships broke off, unwilling to risk destruction. Deep in the cavern, the crew found a quiet pocket where they could rest. The crystal walls hummed faintly, resonating with the ship's engines. "How did you know this was here?" Lena whispered, kneeling beside Spark. He showed her an image of the same cavern, but in his memory, the crystals glowed brighter, and there were other creatures like him playing among them. "This was one of your hiding places," she said softly. Spark pressed his head against her hand. After several hours, they left the asteroid behind and continued toward the beacon. The journey grew quieter. The crew spoke less, sensing they were entering a place few had seen before. Spark spent more time at the front of the bridge, watching the stars. Finally, after nearly 2 weeks of travel, the beacon's location appeared ahead. A faint blue star with a single green and blue world orbiting it. Lena's breath caught. "It's beautiful." Spark's fur shimmered in the starlight. He sent them all a rush of feelings, joy, relief, and something like longing. As they approached, they saw that the planet was untouched. No cities, no stations, just forests, mountains, and oceans stretching as far as the eye could see. This is his home," Dean said quietly. "We might be the first humans to see it." But before they could begin their descent, alarms blared. The Elvari research cruiser, sleek, massive, and armed, emerged from behind the planet's moon. "They were waiting for us," the navigator said grimly. Spark stood at the console. Fur, bristling, eyes glowing like twin suns. The battle for his home was about to begin. The silver dawn hung in orbit above the green and blue planet, its engines on low power. In front of them, the Elvari research cruiser loomed like a dark shadow, blocking the view of the world below. Its hull gleamed under the distant sun, long and sleek, with rows of weapon ports glowing faintly. Everyone on the bridge could feel the tension. Dean's voice was calm, but his jaw was tight. "Full shields! Hold position! Let's see what they want!" The comm crackled, and the Elvari commander's voice filled the room. "Human vessel! You have in your possession a genetic asset belonging to the Elvari Empire. Surrender it immediately, and you will be allowed to leave unharmed." Spark stood at the console beside Lena, fur bristling, golden eyes locked on the cruiser. Lena leaned toward the comm. "He's not your property. He's a living being, and he's going home." The commander's voice hardened. "That asset is the last surviving subject of an advanced genetic program. His abilities belong to us. You have no right to keep him," Dean cut in. "We're not handing him over. If you want him, you'll have to go through us." There was a pause, then the Elvari voice turned cold. "Then you will be destroyed." The cruiser's forward guns lit up, firing beams of searing energy. The silver dawn rolled to the side, the shots grazing their shields. "Return fire," Dean ordered. The small cargo ship wasn't built for combat, but Spark leapt onto the main console, his paws tapping controls with surprising precision. The ship's defense turrets spun into position and began firing in rapid bursts, targeting the cruiser's weapon ports. "Direct hit on their port battery," the navigator called, but the Elvari ship was massive, and their shields barely flickered under the Silver Dawn's counterattack. "We can't win head-on," Dean muttered. "We need a plan." Spark sent a sharp pulse into everyone's minds. AI, picture of the planet's thick green forests, then an image of the cruiser crashing through them. Lena's eyes widened. "He wants us to lure them into the atmosphere. Dense terrain, high interference. Their big guns won't be as effective down there." Dean didn't hesitate. "Do it. Set a course." The Silver Dawn dove toward the planet, engines flaring. The cruiser followed, firing all the way. Flames licked the edges of the shields as they hit the upper atmosphere, turbulence shaking the hull. Clouds swallowed them, thick and white, and the planet's green surface began to take shape below. Spark closed his eyes, sending out pulses like sonar. Guided by his mental map, the crew steered toward a chain of jagged mountains surrounded by storm clouds. Their targeting systems will be a mess in this weather, the navigator said. Lightning flashed as the cruiser followed them down, massive, engines roaring. The battle became a chase through valleys and cliffs. The Silver Dawn weaved between rock spires, sometimes so close that the wingtips scraped stone. The cruiser tried to follow but had to slow to avoid colliding with the terrain. Spark sent a flash into Lena's mind, an image of a hidden canyon with a narrow entrance. "Hard turn, bearing 37, Lena called. Dean yanked the controls, and the ship darted into the canyon. The entrance was barely wide enough for them, and the cruiser overshot, forced to loop back around. Inside the canyon, they found a hidden lake fed by waterfalls. Cliffs rose on every side, and the thick mist made them almost invisible from above. They landed quickly, powering down the engines to avoid detection. Everyone was silent for a moment, catching their breath. "He just saved our lives again," the navigator said, looking at Spark in awe. Spark padded to the viewport, gazing at the mist-shrouded lake. Their rest didn't last long. A low rumble echoed through the canyon, and a shadow passed overhead. The cruiser had found them. Massive dropships began descending, carrying Elvari soldiers in dark armor. "They're sending ground forces," Dean said grimly. "Get ready." Lena crouched beside Spark. "We can't fight an army." Spark sent her an image, an ancient stone structure deep in the forest, covered in vines, with a bright blue crystal at its heart. Alongside it came a feeling of safety, protection. "He wants us to go there," Lena told the crew. "Then we move fast," Dean said. "Grab only what you need." The crew slipped out of the canyon on foot, Spark leading the way through the dense forest. The ground was damp, the air filled with the sound of distant waterfalls and alien birds. Spark moved with surprising speed, weaving between trees and over roots, always pausing to make sure they were following. Behind them, faint shouts and mechanical hums told them the Elvari were closing in. After nearly an hour, they reached a clearing where a massive stone arch rose from the earth. It was covered in moss, and strange carvings glowed faintly along its surface. In the center of the arch floated a crystal the size of a human head, pulsing with soft blue light. Spark approached it slowly, his fur shimmering in response. "What is this place?" the navigator whispered. "Looks ancient," Lena said. "Older than anything the Elvari built." Spark touched the crystal with his paw. The glow intensified, spreading across the carvings and into the ground beneath them. Hum filled the air, and a transparent dome of light formed around the clearing. "Shields?" Dean asked. "Something like that," Lena replied. "But it's not ours." Outside the dome, the first wave of Elvari soldiers appeared, weapons raised. They fired, but the energy bolts dissolved harmlessly against the barrier. Spark stood. In the center, eyes closed, his tail low and still. The crystal's glow matched the faint light in his fur. "He's linked to it," Lena realized. "This is his people's technology." The Elvari soldiers tried to force their way in, but the barrier held. Then the cruiser itself appeared above the trees, its shadow darkening the clearing. The commander's voice boomed from above. "You cannot hide forever. The barrier will fail, and when it does, you will hand over the subject." Spark opened his eyes and looked at Lena, sending her a final image. More creatures like him, running freely across the forests of this planet. Lena's voice trembled. "This is his home. They're trying to take away the last of his kind." Dean's hands tightened into fists. "Then we make sure they don't." Spark stepped back from the crystal, the barrier still shimmering. He looked at the silver dawn, crew, then toward the cruiser overhead. Another pulse filled their minds. Not just an image, but a plan. And it was dangerous. The crew of the Silver Dawn stood in the glowing clearing, the crystal's blue light washing over their faces. Spark's golden eyes shone brighter than ever. He had shown them a plan, one that could end the chase forever, but only if they trusted him completely. "Are you sure about this?" Lena whispered, crouching beside him. Spark sent her an image so clear it made her catch her breath. Him standing free on the green hills of his home, the Elvari cruiser broken and retreating. "Into the sky." Dean glanced from Spark to Lena. "Whatever he's thinking, we're in. Tell us what to do." Lena shook her head. "He's not telling us with words, but I think he wants to use the crystal's power against the cruiser." "How?" the navigator asked. Spark padded to the center of the clearing, placing one paw on the crystal. The barrier rippled, then widened, pushing outward until it covered a larger area. The ground beneath their feet began to hum. Thin blue lines of light snaked through the grass, connecting to stones, trees, and even the air itself. "This isn't just a shield," Lena realized. "It's a network. The whole forest is part of it." Above them, the Elvari cruiser circled, its weapons charging. Dropships continued to hover at the barrier's edge, their soldiers waiting for it to fail. Spark looked up at the massive ship, then at Dean, sending him a mental flash, a pattern of light surging upward, striking the cruiser's underbelly. "He's turning the shield into a weapon," Dean said. The idea was risky. The crystal's energy might be able to discharge in one powerful burst, but doing so could burn it out forever. Spark's link to it might also put him in danger. Lena's stomach twisted. If he does this, it could kill him. Spark met her gaze and sent her an image of herself smiling at him the first day they met. Then came a wave of warmth and gratitude. His way of telling her that saving his home was worth any risk. The hum grew louder. Blue light climbed the trees, their branches glowing like threads of glass. The barrier began to shift, forming streams of energy that arced toward the sky. The Elvari must have realized what was happening because the commander's voice roared over the comm. "Stop immediately or we will destroy the clearing!" But it was too late. Spark's eyes flared and the crystal responded. A pillar of pure blue light erupted upward, piercing the clouds and striking the cruiser dead center. The shockwave rippled through the air, sending the dropships spinning out of control. The cruiser's shields flared violently, then shattered in a spray of sparks. "Direct hit!" the navigator shouted. "Their weapons are offline!" The cruiser reeled, its engines struggling. Smaller explosions popped across its surface, but the energy surge took its toll. Spark collapsed beside the crystal, his fur dimming. Lena ran to him, scooping him into her arms. "Spark, stay with me," she said urgently. He was breathing, but his eyes were closed, his small body trembling. Above them, the cruiser tried to regain stability, but the damage was too great. With a deep, metallic groan, it began to pull away from the planet, retreating into the upper atmosphere. Cheers broke out among the crew, but Lena's focus stayed on the small life in her arms. Hours later, the Silver Dawn was parked safely in the clearing. The Elvari were gone. Whether for good or only for now, no one could say. The crystal's glow had dimmed, but the forest felt alive, as if the land itself was grateful. Spark lay on a blanket in Lena's quarters, his breathing steady but slow. She sat beside him, stroking his fur gently. "You did it," she whispered. "You saved your home." Dean entered quietly. "How is he?" "Resting," Lena said. "I think the crystal drained him, but he'll recover." Dean nodded, then looked out at the forest beyond the viewport. "This place is something special. Maybe we should help protect it." Over the next few days, the crew explored the area. They found ancient stone paths, overgrown but still solid, leading to other crystals hidden deep in the forests. Spark followed them on short walks, his strength slowly returning. Every time they approached one of the crystals, his fur glowed faintly, as if greeting an old friend. The crew began to understand. This wasn't just Spark's home. It was the heart of his people's legacy, a network of living energy meant to keep the planet safe. One morning, Spark bounded into the mess hall with more energy than they'd seen since the battle. He sent an image to everyone at once. The crew of the Silver Dawn, him included, flying together across the stars. "He doesn't want us to leave," the navigator said. Lena shook her head, smiling. "No, I think he wants to come with us." Dean grinned. "Guess we've got ourselves a permanent crew member." Spark barked once, a bright, happy sound, and leapt into Lena's lap. Before they left the planet, the crew worked with Spark to strengthen the barrier crystals, making sure any future invaders would have a much harder time breaking through. The Silver Dawn lifted off slowly, giving the green world one last look. Spark stood at the viewport, tail waving, sending them all a final image of the forests, the mountains, and the bright blue sky. As the ship climbed into the stars, Dean glanced over his shoulder at him. "You know, Spark, you're the best thing that's ever happened to this ship." Spark sent them a wave of joy and belonging so strong it made everyone smile. Weeks later, on a quiet night between systems, Lena found herself on the bridge with Spark curled beside her. She looked out at the endless stars. "You were abandoned when we found you," she murmured. "But now, your family." Spark pressed his head against her arm, sending her an image of the crew laughing together, the Silver Dawn flying, free. And for the first time in a long while, Lena felt completely certain. They would face whatever came next, together,